And today, we're talking about aging process because I just came back from a crisis intervention call where I had to advocate for two elders that are in crises because one is 90 and the other's 86, and they are both in placement, a senior living facility. And I was called in by one of the children whom was trying to get other family members to realize what they needed to do with the elders' consent because the elders had began to dummy down their sense and receive paths. So the way this all correlates with the brain's body learning system is that we're talking about sense and receive path functions, which is choice decision making. But in this instance, as you age into those final stages of life, you lose certain capacities. And one of the main capacities that we talk around is brain fog. So the crisis involves when you're getting older and you experience brain fog from a complex perspective where you don't necessarily recover. An example would be if I experience brain fog, it's temporary, and I never lose sight of the search for what it was that I may have forgotten. So my brain continues to work. And within, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes or less, hopefully less, it comes back to you. But what I want you to understand is that you have a process of continuation that you can reflect back upon and realize that your brain never stopped, nor did you stop believing in the search for what you thought left your mind, reflective capacity, not the brain, because the brain is still working on the information flow. So what I want you to understand is that as you get older, you lose certain abilities. And so when you stop moving through your sense of feel for self and you resort to the sense of self, the sense of self has no process variable. It's a sense of you, not a sense of feel for you, because a sense of feel for you means a sense of feel for the brain. Okay? That's why we always say a sense of feel for self. But it's easier to talk to older people about the sense of feel because as you age, you learn through your feelings how things actually feel to you. So when we say sense of feel, you know that that's the research act. You make contact and you feel your way through that contact. As you get older and as you become more frail and displaced, I mean, when you no longer want to meet contact because of all the complexities that are involved, that's the brain work, and you think you're having brain difficulties, then you begin to resist. And when you resist, that means that you ignore the contact. So the sense of self is left out in empty space because you don't have a feel for the experience. You're basically saying you don't want to experience that. So you're hiding from the inside and blocking out all external events. And so the crisis is dialogue. How do you communicate if you're no longer, to put it this way, if you're dumbing down your sense path so that nothing comes through? How do people interact with you if you're not available? You're still there, but you are dealing with young people who try to overtalk you because they can, and because now they have power over you because they're assigned as your caregiver. You are left to levels of frustration or disappointment or hostility, depression. So that's probably what we're dealing with. So here we go. Because the bottom line is, how does this relate back to the brain's body? And it relates back to the brain's body because you have to understand how the energy, action, and feelings flow, because that information flow, when it's blocked, that's what you have, a sense of. Now, where does that go? It can go nowhere because it is you inside the body that has to participate in the transfer of that energy, action, and feelings to the brain. But when you avoid the contact, you're disconnecting the sense of feel. So now you just have a sense of self. And so that's like introspection because you're blocking everything else. So you can see what I'm saying is you lose the connectivity between your sense of feel for self and the brain. So what you're dealing with is your physics. Your physics, I call that neurophysics, because we're talking about brain, body, and sense events. We're talking about developmental aspects of the transformation of information through the nervous system. And we're dealing with your sense of feel for self, which is both external and internal, because the body's physical, and the brain is internal mental. So the neurophysics represents the developing communication system between self, other people, and the environment, right? And that's a nervous system, the sense and receive path functions, all interwoven in how you make choice decisions. So when I'm reading the parent or the child or the elder, I'm reading their physics and transferring those physics or relating those physics to the neural signs of cognition, that's emotion, thought, or reflection, in a response pattern. So even if you're dummying down, you have a response. You're sitting there and I can read your behavior pattern. I can read your mood state. I can look at your state of mind. And I don't look at those things as one. The brain is separate. The mind is something that's created through the experience. So here we go, because the children are compelling their elders to experience them. But what the elders is perceiving is their unwillingness to allow themselves to experience the elders in the sense and state that they are. They may not be who they once were, but they are still inside the body. So you still have to communicate with them with respect. That's what we're talking about. So in this crisis intervention that I was doing, it was very complicated because I had to figure out how to settle down the environment long enough for everybody to realize and begin to pay attention to the noise and sounds in the room. Because when the brain is out of whack, what do you have? Chaos, right? So nobody was connecting. She had a lot of noise, right? And what you want them to realize that as you're there, how that noise began to turn into sounds. I mean, you walk in the room 1 minute and it's all chaotic, and gradually it settles down. And gradually everybody can feel everybody else in the room. That lets you know that the brain is now taking the lead. So all these people are becoming connected in line with the situation that we're involved in at that point in time. So we're talking about neuroscience, but not from the perspective of neuroscience, but from the social cognitive side, because the social context is what people represent. And the contact is the transfer of that information to the sense path that has to be in the receive path to formally connect the brain to the experience. And so what I'm saying to you, what I wanted to be able to do was feel the room changing. So when persons come in the room, I'm watching to see the changes that are taking place. So as a person comes in the room, feedback is already firing at them because everybody else is responding to them entering the room, right? So your elders are observing the changes too because they know how we started. And they know that it is them who's under attack. See, the young people don't want to change. They want the elders to continue to change and adapt to them and to lead without understanding that you just don't get to lead. You see, you have to prove that you can lead with them still in the lead. You see, because they have brains too. And that's why they're the elders, and that's why they're in a facility, because they can afford to pay for it. And that marks their own benefits in their own life journey. And they're still trying to teach you, but you won't listen. And these are the dynamics that I was dealing with, and it was very, very chaotic. But then it began to settle down, and I got those three words I always use, right? The three words that I always use to describe this: cool, calm, collect. Okay? Cool off, calm down, and collect that sense of feel for self. Now, everybody had to do this, but you can't get them to do it at the same time, and that's what the dialogue is about. So when I'm in the room and I'm listening, waiting on people to begin to actually talk. That took 3 days. So the first 3 days, everybody was in the room. Silence. Nobody saying anything. Just complete silence. And then after you leave the elders, everybody's talking. Chip, 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 chipping away. And the elders are talking too, because they bonded. Husband and wife is bonded. And they're saying, hey, them young folks are crazy. They just don't know. But what they don't know is we're still here. We may not be able to compete with you. I'm talking about verbally. You know, the young people can out-talk them, I'll say it again, but they can't out-think them. Even with a defective, because you see, the elder still has the experience in their lane, because you're not in your world, you're in their world. You see, and you're there to try to make sure that you're positioned in the life after they've gone, right? And they know this, and we know this, right? So if the elders are poor, hell, who would care? But because they weren't poor, that's where the depression sets in from, because you're not accustomed to having other people dictate how you should live, eat, drink, take medications, okay? Their way, you know, them managing you and also placing you in a facility. That's a lot to take. But see, this is what I want to talk about, because the brain's body was still in the lead. I mean, that's what's fascinating to me, is that I'm still observing the brain's body, because this one lady, I mean, when she was active, she was dynamite. And I was able to sit there and observe her manage the room without saying a word, because the presence of her, the history of her, the histrionics as a matriarch was still evident. And she was still getting that type of feedback. And that's why she had to say a word. See, because she knew what she was doing. But on the other hand, the male had difficulty, because most men don't know how to feel. And I'm saying to you that that's what she knew how to do. She knew how to feel the room. She felt everybody come in the room. And as they came in the room, she didn't have to say anything. Just kept watching TV and stayed focused on the TV. And the only person she talked to was a person who called for my help and her husband. Nothing else mattered to her, because she knew she was not at a level of understanding anymore where she could actually dialogue with everybody at the same time. That's too much brain work. So the brain's body is about understanding your sense of feel for self as you gradually become more aware of where you are. And that was a learning part, teaching everybody where they were. And then getting them to respect and value the fact that they have advanced, or maybe they haven't. That's what you find out when you're dealing with elders. You find out if you really got the capacity or not. See? Because at the end of the day, either you missing it, or you're in there and you're exchanging changes in your sense of feel for self in relation to them, because you're recognizing this is the appropriate step to take. You don't override, you collaborate. You don't force, right? You offer choices, options to move in the direction that you're trying to get them to move in. That's why it's a crisis, because most people deal with the sense of self, selfishness, self first. And there's no room for the other person, so there's no care, right? There's no connectivity. So when I talk about the silence in the room, I'm talking about the family being silent because it's disconnected, because nobody knows how, because they never learned how to feel for self or anyone else. But they do know about themselves and what they want from themselves, see, because they're selfish. See? But let me throw this word back at you because you know the science is all about the words. Sense, a feel for self, and the brain. Did you hear that? Sense, a feel for self, and the brain. I'm talking about the gist of human system science, right? Brain, body, and sense events. You feel the brain inside the body through the senses. That are sending social cognitive data at you, that the brain is sending forward feed to respond to, and you're sitting there saying, I don't know why I just did what I did, until you settle down and begin to move to your sense of feel for self, which is the information flow. And as you begin to understand that, now, when people ask me questions, this is how I was talking. So I never come down, I stay here. See, because this is the expectation coming from me. Whatever he says, it's going to be about the brain's body. The brain, the lead of the body. Because when the body's in the lead, people are getting hurt. Feelings are getting hurt. Because that means that your mood state is out. And it's less control. Right? That's the body, less control. So you're apt to get slapped. You're apt to get, door slammed in your face. That emotion is just going, to multiple levels of negative flow. So what you want to do is understand your sense of feel and get everybody else to realize what a sense of feel is without talking bad to them or telling them you are only thinking about yourself. No, you can't do that. You have to maintain that level of concentration and confidence, right? In the brain's ability to lead you, and then you follow through. Why? Because the feedback's coming back to you because you understand the sense of feel for self is the flow of energy, action, and feelings moving through your neural systems, right? The brain. And then the brain is kicking back feedback that you're analytically looking at because anybody in the room is a data source. They're feeding you feedback, right? And your senses are collecting all this data simultaneously. Now I go back to the elders because the elders still understand that. They still understand that because they're physically observing it, right? The loss of the brain fog is when they're asked a question and then they have to kick back to reflect. No, because they can't reflect. Why? Because they have memory lapses. There's a disconnect, a neurologic disconnect, right? So, but that don't mean that they don't come back and realize the conversation or realize the point, you see? Because they do. And what you're supposed to do is respect and value the fact that they are still there breathing and they're still caring enough about themselves and you. Now, if they were disruptive to you and others, then that would be warning signs that, hey, they're not open. I mean, it's a threat. So there's no threat if they are allowing you to be in the environment and you're trying to get them to change for you, but they're not acting out. Okay? What is that? Management of the brain's body. So they were under control, right? Body was under control. The senses were processing everything. I'm assessing all these things as a human scientist because I just told you the methodology. Study the brain, body, and senses, information flow. Look at reflection, thought, and action, the emotion. What's happening in the emotion? When you look at the emotion, what are you looking for? A mood state. And what does the mood state say? You measure the state of the mind, a reflective capacity that's fit. In my mind, that's how in my mind, you don't say in my brain, see? Because your brain is continuously changing. So when you talk about your brain, yes, that's how you felt yesterday. But because you experienced the information, tomorrow you're different. See, a mind stores the memory, the reflection of the experience. So when you look at your mind, you're saying, well, when I reflect, see, because that's the mind, right? That's what we're gigging them on. We're saying you've lost your state of mind. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as the brain is still functioning, see? Because when you're caring for elders, that's what you want. You want to deal with their brain, not their body, not the mind. You want to deal with their brain. Why? Because you're trying to get their brain to continue to function and process the experience, right? of trying to live, learn, think, and respond to the complexities that surround them. So you want to be there to help. See, because that's when they need help, because they're trying to sustain life. Okay, and that's the energy you're supposed to bring. You're supposed to bring that energy because they are where they are and they know where they are. They know what's next. And you're supposed to say, well, let's make it as comfortable for them around us as is possible. See? But that's the hardest thing to do when you got family. See, so I couldn't solve that problem. But the problem it did solve was in understanding the positions of the elders. It relates to the young people. It's to young people. See? At the end of the day, they had to eat it. Why? Because at the end of the day, who's there to care for the elders? They're in the right place. They're being cared for 24 hours a day. Okay? So that's a helpful service. So what do you have to do? You have to learn how to allow yourself to accept the circumstances you find yourself in, and that you have to then become part of the healing team. See? Self-help, self-research, self-discovery. Because you are the one who needs to be helped. Because you're supposed to pause, see, and just serve. Now, I'm not talking baloney. I'm talking about the situation of trying to reduce a crisis so that older people do not have to suffer more than what they're already suffering because they're in the aging loop, okay? And they're losing capacity and ability, right? So they're losing neurophysics. Say it again. They're losing their ability to function environmentally, cognitively, and through the sense of feel for self in relation to other people so they can't compete at the level they once were. That's disappointing. Think about that. You have children, and your children are always trying to act like you. So you're trying to grow up too fast. Well, imagine dealing with an elder. That's the elder saying. Except in this situation, they want you to grow up fast, but they want you to comprehend the need to have patience and follow to lead. See, not try to lead and not follow, because that's not help. That's telling them, look, your time is over. Hurry up. Get out of here. Oh, see, so bringing all this stuff together, okay, we're looking at what? How the behavior of the environment had to be changed. Because if you didn't change the behavior in the environment, then how do you calm down, collect that sense of feel for self, right? To realize they've dummied down. They're no longer trying to have contact with you. They cut you off. Nothing's getting through the sense path. So they become more and more ignorant of you. See? Which means they lack information. So you come back the next day, you may be talking, they cannot recall that information because they never did experience it. Because you alienated yourself from them and they shut you up, they cut you off, they shut you down, they block your experience. They didn't experience you. You may have experienced them, but they didn't experience you. But when you walk in the room now, they are recording the effect on you of not being heard. So now you have them sending negative energy to you, and that intensifies the moment that you're in because you're trying to gain control. So you're just getting more frustrated, more disappointed, right? And you're becoming hostile. Why? Because other people are realizing you don't have the power you thought you had. So everything you're in the room for, you're not receiving any energy, not positive energy, because no one's working with you. Why? Because everybody's beginning to realize these people's point of view. And they haven't said a word. But people can read the body as I continue to talk and talk about the sense of feel for self in the brain and how the brain has been a lead of the body and what you're looking for. If the brain's a lead of the body, what you're looking for? The sense through feel, through focus. So when you come in the room is quiet. Why? Because everybody's focused on what? How you enter the room. Are you changed? Or are you the same as when you left? Now, if the change is there, right, then that's new energy to deal with that spin energy that you left yesterday. Now, the elders are paying attention. They don't give you today, but they also make changes because that's what they're looking for. But that's the secret about elders. They know what they're wanting to accomplish through negative energy. They want specific reaction out of you, right? And so they know what they're looking for because they've lived long enough to understand that you got a button. And they're going to push that button to make you feel as uncomfortable as you possibly can. Why? Because that's how they feel. Very uncomfortable with you in the room, doing what you do, which is you, a sense of you. Not a sense of fear, because if it's a sense of fear, you have a sense of fear for self in relation to them, in the environment. And that's why the environment becomes more focused and committed to understanding the noise inside. Because the levels of care increase. Levels of care increase. Levels of care increase because people are changing to cooperate with the need to help heal their sense and receive past functions. The elders. See? And so I go back to just one thing because I'm a male too, and that's where it comes from. I know for years I was a sense of myself, all right, because I couldn't feel anything. Why? Because I wouldn't allow it. I'm blocking, I'm kicking, I'm screaming because we're not supposed to feel anything. So to feel something, that means you're weak, right? But if you can't feel it, you ignore it. And so I'm going to throw this back at you. Maybe that's why I didn't do well in school. Because you have to have a sense of feel for self to care about the classroom. That's what's going on in the academics that you have to ascertain in order for you to survive in school. Without that sense of feel, right? Then you're just relating it to self. And that is an emotional conflict because all you're doing is saying, oh, everybody, teachers don't like me. Hey, because you don't have a sense of feel for the other person in the room. Because if you have a sense of feel for the other person, that's your brain connecting to other people. So when you look at them, you're learning. Now, what are you doing differently? See how the brain is working? It's expanding. In a classroom, you have to learn how to interact with the information flow. It's not just about you. It is you, but it moves through you to who? Other people. And what are the other people doing? So you don't worry about that because you're dealing with the sense of you, not the sense of feel for self, which relates to the brain, and the brain relates to everybody else in the room because it has a sense functions, the sensory organs that are coordinating all these changes in the environment. And through neurotransmitters, sending it back to you. And you're learning how to live through the hurt in the classroom. So I'm saying this to say, no. We always get off like this, but I'm saying to you, ever since that I became a human system scientist, it's been easier for me to move through these systems successfully as a progressive individual who knows how to feel things. And I feel things to experience them, and experiencing them, the power of comprehension is ascertained because you're processing the flow. In the experience, the knowledge base is created, and through the knowledge base is comprehension. That's what you live through because everything you experience when you go to reflect in your state of mind, right? That's a knowledge base. But is the knowledge base thoroughly equipped? I mean, have you experienced living, learning, thinking, and responding long enough to comprehend the experiences that you can? See? That's what we're talking about. So when I go back to the elders, I'm always a sponge. Why? Because The experience of experiencing these experiences, you're validating, and where they lack these experiences, now you're recording that, right? Because African Americans, that's one thing we got to understand. If you see it there, look at yourself. You probably got the same effect. Why? Because slavery impacted all of us. It didn't impact just one. That's why I love to analytically study my elders. Okay? Because I look at them, I look at the flaws, look at the strengths, see, and we're here. Okay. And if you study them long enough, they'll tell you. See? Because you're learning how to study the brain. They'll tell you, right? And now you make the changes, or you make the estimation, then you stop and look and reflect, oh wow. I see. And that's how come we continue to get stronger as a community, because we learn how to understand our parents, elders. Even if we don't respect them anymore the way we used to or should, the knowledge is still there to understand what happened to you, me, and the people around you. There's been a talk about the brain's body. It's a learning system. See, it's a learning system. Get back in the game, catch back up. No, don't slow down. Learn how your brain actually functions, right? Because you can gain control over your life, everything in it. It just takes work. Understanding how the brain senses and receives contact. A sense and receive path function is the capacity or ability to choose and decide which way you're going to go, and then troubleshoot to see if you can understand the consequences. If you can understand the consequences, you have functionality, sense and receive path functionality, which means that you can understand the results of those choices that you're making. Therefore, you can improve them, or you can do something else, but you are aware because you've informed your brain. See, through your sense of feel for self. Okay? So sense and receive path functions, wait a minute, because I'm saying to you, yes, you're an entrepreneur if you study this, because that's what we're talking about. Most people don't understand the brain. And you have to go into neuroscience. All you got to do is understand self-research, self-help, self-discovery, because that's what's going to happen to you. Mastery. Mastery, because once you learn how to move through the contact, to interact, to cooperate, to participate, what do? You perform. What are you doing performing? Because you're trying to improve homeschool and workplace networks. Why? Because you want to be in the economy. And what is everybody trying to do? Become billionaires. But you can't become a billionaire without a methodology that deals with the crisis of self. See? Eating disorder, whatever. You're talking about the brain's body learning system. Brain, you measuring everything you do. The amount of food, drink, everything. You're measuring everything. Why? Because you have a sense of feel for self, and you can feel everything you're doing. And you're not rejecting it. You're not trying to say no. You're not trying to just sense. You're trying to feel. Sense, to feel, to focus. The brain's body. See? The brain's body. See? And when you sense, to feel, to focus, the brain's body, what are you talking about? Systems thinking. Okay, that's the school of thought I came from. That's my doctorate. Systems thinking. Okay? So I'm talking about everything is a part of something else. And you want to synthesize that. You want to master the ideology of being human. Because there's nothing, everybody trying to get back to it, trying to go vegan, trying to go organic, everybody's trying to get back to it. The wholeness of being human, okay? Where your brain just processes everything, and your senses and your perceived functions just flawlessly go from input to throughput to output. You're like the infant, you know? But what am I talking about? Self-recovery. That's what you got to do. Self-recovery. Everybody's trying to sell it. Diet Pro, everybody. So I'm just trying to let you know that the brain's body learning system is exactly that. You know how to live, you know how to think, you know how to respond, and more importantly, when you react and you knew or you know or you find out, oh, I don't want to do that. the brain, you understand, is already sending forward feed. So you don't take flight, right? You pause to focus and feel that energy moving. And then you get your result because it happens that fast. But you can block it because you're saying, well, I made a mistake, and you're trying to block it. No, you let that go through. Because you got to trust your brain. Your brain is not going to hurt you. So I gave you the measurement. Choice, decision, result, feedback. Okay? Can you learn from that? Because we can't learn from the consequences, right? That's your first indication that you have a brain disorder in your sense and receive path that affects the transfer of energy, action, and feelings, right? That transcend emotion, thought, reflection, right? Which you utilize to learn how to live inside these man-made systems. I'm Dr. Christopher Kevin Slaton. I hope I didn't bore you today. I'm welcoming myself back because it was a tremendous trip. I learned a lot. I recommend that at least once or twice a year you do go spend some time with your elders and just listen. Don't try to overtalk them. My practice, I just listen. A good activist just listens. So here we go again, because the ultimate experience was me. Because that's what Dr. Slaton Live is delivering, the ultimate experience. And so when you walk in the room, everybody expects something, but they don't expect you to be so silent. See? But that's brain talk. My brain is talking through my body. And it's always intellectual, right? Because my literature speaks for itself. And when you get me and you talk to me, I speak for me. So when I enter a room full of people and I am not the messenger, I am the consultant, right? I don't have to talk. Everybody wants me to talk. When I talk, I'm delivering an effect. See? An effect to reduce the affect, right? And then in the flow, I'm trying to create the influence where everybody synthesizes the affect and the effect to realize where they are and what they need to do next.